Welcome to the 700 Club. We're all now surging to number one. The United States is the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, with more cases than any other country. Major U.S. cities are bracing for the possibility of becoming hotspots, just like New York.
Well, meanwhile, a glimmer of hope. The projected global numbers for COVID-19 have been revised down, and Congress is on the verge of passing that much-needed economic relief for Americans. Jennifer Wishon has the story.
Today, the House plans to deliver a $2.2 trillion economic rescue bill after it passed the Senate 96-0.
It will pass. It will pass with a strong bipartisan support.
Checks could arrive in mailboxes by the first week in April, just in time. The chairman of the Federal Reserve says the economy may well be in recession. But today, a glimmer of light. The report from Imperial College London that predicted widespread infections along with 2 million deaths in the U.S. and reportedly helped the Trump administration take serious steps against the virus has been revised down. Isolation and lockdown measures have changed their projections. Dr. Deborah Burke says the model never matched the reality on the ground.
So when people start talking about 20% of a population getting infected, it's very scary. But we don't have data that matches that based on the experience.
But beyond the models, New Yorkers are bearing the brunt of about half the cases in the U.S. And The Hill reports the CDC's real-world tracking is raising concerns other cities may face the same problems. Dr. Ann Schuchat with the CDC tells The Hill, "I think what we're seeing in New York City and New York State right now is a real warning to other areas about what may happen or what may already be starting to happen before we ease up on the social measures that are in place." She declined to name cities likely to see major outbreaks, but there are growing concerns that New Orleans could become the next major epicenter. Meanwhile, despite reports about shortages, Dr. Burke says ICU beds are still available in New York, along with thousands of ventilators.
To wake up this morning and look at people talking about creating DNR situations, do not resuscitate situations for patients. There is no situation in the United States right now that warrants that kind of discussion.
We grow more confident every day that this too shall pass, with the cooperation and generosity and prayers.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Well, this too shall pass, but it's up to us to make sure it does pass and does pass by without it coming to your home. And the best way you can do that is stay home. If you have to go out and if you have to buy things in the grocery store or buy other necessities, by all means, wipe down that cart, pay attention to what you're handling, make sure that when you bring it back into your home, you're wiping it down. We've got to have these kinds of protections. I know it sounds unusual to go through these kinds of procedures, and everybody wants to socialize, nobody wants to isolate. But the reality is we have to. We have to get to a position where the virus doesn't spread. Otherwise, we're all going to be just like New York City. We all saw the news reports. We all saw the people on the streets in New York. They were not working, and so they were gathering in the streets, not observing social distancing. And no wonder we're now seeing the hospitals in New York literally overwhelmed. Let's stop this together. We can do this. It's just please stay home. Please stay in protected environments. If you have a fever, if you have any of the symptoms, please go into quarantine. Together, we can get through this. But if we continue in our current ways, we're going to see more of these viral blooms. New Orleans is going to be next, but just start thinking of all those beaches down in Florida, the number of people that flock to them, were they transmission points, and now they're all going home again after spring break. How many more viral outbreaks do we have to go through before we all finally get the message? If we just stay home and wait this thing out, we can crush this virus in its tracks. Well, here's some other bad news. A stunning announcement today out of the UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has tested positive for the coronavirus. Ephraim Graham has that story from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon Johnson will remain in charge of the United Kingdom's response to the outbreak. He said he was tested for COVID-19 on the advice of the chief medical officer after showing mild symptoms involving a temperature and a persistent cough. He met in person with some of his senior ministers and officials this week. He tweeted he's working from home and he can communicate with his top team to fight the outbreak. Back here in the United States, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine tells CBN News his faith has guided his response to the coronavirus crisis. DeWine has been praised for recognizing the threat early on, and he tells CBN News' David Brody he lives every day with the pressure of making decisions that can determine if someone lives or dies.
Ohio Governor Mike DeWine doesn't dabble in prophecy, but his early moves to combat the coronavirus have looked prophetic. Before there were any known cases in the state, he shut down a big sports festival. And then, after just 3 cases, he shut down the entire K-12 school system. DeWine gave me the inside story and more during our one-on-one interview.
We made those decisions based on science, based on what the best experts could tell us, who really said, look, you got to have this social distancing, and you've got to do it early, because if you wait too long, it's too late. Look, we're all dealing with the same problem. We do not have enough tests. We don't have the testing capacity, but that's a nationwide problem, and it's a real challenge. And of course, now what we're looking for is making sure, as the surge comes, this wave comes at us, we know it's coming, to make sure that we do everything we can to build out our hospitals. We think we may have to double the size of our beds, number of our beds. At the same time, making sure our medical personnel have the personal protective gear that they really need to have. And so we've stopped all elective surgeries in Ohio, for example. We've asked the dentists to do the same things. We've even asked the veterinarians to do the same thing, so we can save some of this gear for when we know we're going to really need it.
There are certain states that have exempted religious gatherings from this stay-at-home order, Ohio being one of them. Why did you feel the need to exempt religious gatherings exactly? And what's your message to people of faith all across Ohio and really the country, Governor?
Well, I didn't think it was proper really for government to infringe upon people's First Amendment rights. But we've also been quite candid with people, and I've been candid with ministers and others. I've had conference calls with them and say, look, you're not doing your folks any favors by bringing them together. And what I found is that churches have been very adaptable.
Governor, you're a father of 8, a grandfather of 24. You're a devout Catholic. I'm wondering about your faith and how it informs what you're doing through this crisis and how you've relied on your faith during this crisis. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think this is, if there's ever a time when you need to make decisions based on what you think are the best interest of people, it's a crisis like this. And, I think the essential function of government is to protect people. And so that's what my faith tells me. My faith tells me that every life is precious, whether it's the unborn, after it's born, basically from conception to natural death. And so this is a matter of life and death. We are dealing with people's lives, and the decisions that I make will determine, to some extent, whether people are going to live or not live. So my attitude throughout this has been, let's get the facts. I keep asking questions. I try to find anybody who knows anything about this and try to learn from them, and then base my decisions on that. The other thing I've learned throughout life is that when I don't trust my gut, when other people are going one way and I think, well, I probably ought to go this way, and then I end up going with them, I'm usually wrong. So I've learned to trust my gut. And my instinct throughout this has been, and this is based on what the experts have told me, but my gut has been, we're not moving fast enough. We just got to move faster. And so that's my message to my team every day. We got to move faster. As John Wayne said in one of his movies, we're burning daylight. We're burning daylight, and we're running out of time, and we got to get this right, and we got to move quick.
That's an area where this governor has excelled. David Brody, CBN News.
And you can see David's full interview with Governor DeWine at cbnnews.com. Want to turn now to Israel in one of the biggest turnarounds in the country's political history. Benny Gantz of the opposition Blue and White Party has reportedly agreed to join a national unity government with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, the coronavirus pandemic played a major role in this political breakthrough.
After weeks of refusing to join a national emergency government, Blue and White leader Benny Gantz set the stage for joining forces with Prime Minister Netanyahu. In a speech before a nearly empty Knesset because of the coronavirus, Gantz said why he made his decision.
Let's join hands and take Israel out of the crisis it is in. Together, let us put Israel before anything else.
According to the deal, Gantz could become either foreign or defense minister, while Netanyahu will remain prime minister for 18 months until 2021, when Gantz will become prime minister. The deal now brings together a number of parties to create a sizable governing coalition. It's the first sign of unity and political stability within Israel in more than a year. The deal also effectively split Gantz's Blue and White Party, which was one of the largest in Israel. One of its leaders, Yair Lapid, refused to join the government.
The most important thing right now is to work together to fight the coronavirus, but that's not an excuse to sit in a government with Netanyahu.
The agreement is a political victory for Benjamin Netanyahu. He remains prime minister, and this could delay the trial he is facing on 3 separate indictments. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Netanyahu has called for an emergency government for weeks. More than 3,000 Israelis are now infected. The country is in a near total lockdown to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, as Netanyahu is trying to prevent a health catastrophe. With a stable government, it appears Israel can now face the pandemic with a unified front on the eve of one of Judaism's holiest feasts, Passover. It marks the time when the Jewish people were saved from the biblical 10 plagues in Egypt. Their prayer this year is that they can be saved from another plague once again. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A critical time for unity for us all. Gordon?
I hope that our politicians here in America get the same message. It's time to put America first. Unfortunately, it seems like everyone wants to score political points, but we're facing a crisis that's unprecedented. You have to literally go back 100 years to find something that's even close to what we're facing today. This isn't a time for political division. This is a time where we come shoulder to shoulder and say, what's the best way forward? How can we as a country make it through? How can we stop this virus in its tracks? But it seems to be a political season, and because an election's coming up, we want to score election points as opposed to really getting together to say, how do we solve this and do it as fast and as quickly as we can. Here's a thought for you, and keep this in mind as we get closer to the election. Is going to a voting booth an opportunity to get the virus? Are we just creating yet another wave of viral infection by gathering people to vote? What does that mean for absentee ballots? How do we have a presidential election in the middle of a pandemic? Well, if you want to know more about the coronavirus, if you want to get the latest information, we have a absolutely free webpage for you, cbnnews.com/coronavirus. We also have a free downloadable fact sheet. All you have to do is go to that website, cbnnews.com, and you can find how you can play a part in stopping this horrible disease. You can build a much stronger immune system for yourself. But the biggest key is always social isolation, making sure you're thoroughly washing your hands and wiping down any surface before you come into contact with it. That way you're protected. You're able to say, I'm virus-free. Together we can stop this thing. If we continue on our current ways and ignore the warnings, all that's going to happen is this virus is going to spread. So stay informed. Go to cbnnews.com/coronavirus.